Can you solo every Savage Raid and Extreme Trial in the Stormblood expansion? That is the question. The short answer is no. The long answer is, well, you'll find out. First, let's set some rules. The first obvious one, I can only solo these, and the second, no blue mage. Other than that, everything else is fair game. I'll be level 90, using food and pots, fully utilizing the Echo, and playing Dark Knight at every opportunity I can get, because I hate myself. You might ask, why am I doing this? Well, first to challenge myself. I don't claim to be the best player on this game, and personally I don't care to be. I mean, I'm terrible at Souls games, but I still full solo them all to challenge myself. Because overcoming challenges gives me a sense of accomplishment, and I just can't get enough of that feeling. Still, this wasn't exactly a hard challenge, more just time consuming. But it was fun. Secondly, Stormblood is the most current expansion where soloing duties is actually possible. Shadowbringer duties are currently impossible to solo until 7.0 at the earliest. So to me, this is interesting information to know while we wait for the highly anticipated Dawn Trail expansion. Thirdly, I always see these videos on here soloing the final boss of a tier, but never all the fights. So there isn't really any solid information on if this is doable or not, other than trying for yourself. So not only will I be showcasing what can and cannot be soloed, I'll give you my recommendations and knowledge of should you even be bothering to solo any of these fights, or just grab a few buddies and be 100 times more effective. Spoiler, having buddies will always be more effective, but maybe you're like me and have no friends. We'll begin our adventure with the Omega Raid series, and our first encounter will be up against the noodle snack boy Outr. He proved fairly easy as a first boss, with the only real scares being the Charybdis, which reduced my HP to 1 and then does a raid wide right after, but that's nothing a living dead can't handle. And then that damn clamp after the Breathwing pushback. If I got hit by this, off the arena I'd go, but lucky for me I managed to avoid it and finish Mr. Snack Boy off. With O1S being a success, our next challenge awaited in O2S, with the I've seen too much hentai to know where this is going catastrophe. And this was our first wall. You see, he does this cleave called Paranormal Wave. Do you know what this gives you? A stacking debuff called Gradual Petrifaction. What does Gradual Petrifaction do, you may ask? Well, upon reaching 3 stacks, you'll be petrified and die to 1 hit. In short, this is a tank swap mechanic. Catastrophe? You cheeky son of a bitch. I wasn't ready to give up yet though, so I tried a few things. First, I tried hyper-mitigating the stacks. Maybe if I took 0 damage to the Paranormal Wave, it wouldn't give me a stack. Wrong. It still gives stacks. What about using an invuln when I get petrified? Maybe it would prevent the one-shots? Nope. I still died. In a last-ditch effort, I switched to Gunbreaker to try Super Blide. The difference between Super Blide and Living Dead is Living Dead doesn't make you take 0 damage, it just makes it so you can't die. But Super Blide makes you invulnerable to attacks. Maybe this could prevent the stacks. Again, this did not work. Maybe invuln the 3rd stack? Nope. How about swapping to a DPS and bursting him down before the 3rd stack? Yeah, well, unless you're doing 100k plus DPS, good luck, he isn't dying. Well, Tentacle Boy, it seems you've won this round. I'll be coming back for your ass in 7.0 low. So O2S was a failure. Surely O3S will prove successful, right? The voice of naivety. Because little did I know that Halicarnassus would be my next wall. Everything was going well until about a minute into the fight. Suddenly I see a bunch of roll symbols, and if memory serves me right, you just go into the same symbol as your roll. But there's a problem. She's casting Oink. What the heck does this do? It has this recognizable indicator on me, and a curse mechanic that requires at least 1 other player to stack with me to negate the effect of Oink, but I have no other players. So I'm turned into a piggy. Great. Well, surely going into the tank symbol will still be fine, right? I'm still a tank after all. Nope. As a piggy, you aren't a roll. You're a piggy, and so I die like a piggy. 473k true damage. Yikes. I only have 236k health, but I wasn't just about to give up yet. So I tried to use my invuln, and nope, that didn't work. Okay. How about kitchen sinking all of my cooldowns and TBN to reduce the damage? 473k again. Of course, it's true damage. It can't be mitigated. Halicarnassus, you got me beat. Well done. Well, so far, so bad, but let's not be too negative, because our next fight might just be our next success. O4S. We're facing off against XDef, and he was fairly simple to get past. Most damage he did was negligible, and the mechanics are easy enough to do. Black Hole was a little scary because I got 4 of these damn things following me, but it wasn't so bad. The only real annoyance was getting petrified by White Hole, but fortunately this petrify is pretty tame and doesn't instantly kill you, and my Living Shadow was a real MVP and pushed XDef into his next phase. Neo XDef. And honestly, he feels easier to solo than doing it with other players. Mechanics that require you to spread and position yourself properly just don't apply here when soloing, because it's either all on you or these mechanics are just skipped over. Beyond Death was a close one. It makes it so you have to die to get rid of the debuff, and it leaves you with 1 HP. And as a Dark Knight, that's a pretty scary thing, but nothing I couldn't handle with a few hyper potions handy. Charybdis gave me a good scare too, and a double attack straight after, but even then, just using Shadow Wall and TBN was enough to mitigate through and survive with my sliver of HP. Then came Grand Cross Omega, and I almost choked this. Neo throws 3 solvable mechanics at you, one after another, and I also had another Beyond Death debuff. Picking a place to die here is pretty damn important, and I chose the very first mechanic, leaving me with no HP, and I still had 2 more mechanics to go. And the last one was the mechanic where I have to take the opposite shape of my debuff here, but it still does damage. So I just TBN'd myself and prayed. Then Neo does a Flood of Naught, which is a wild magic charge mechanic. Like the idiot I am, I only used 2 cooldowns here and almost died, but I got lucky. After that, it was just a matter of finishing Neo XDef off. And with that, a success. Although I knew this was doable already, it was fun to go through the process and repeat it. And with that, the Deltascape verdict was in. 2 out of 4 fights were doable. That was surprising. I thought the entire tier would be soloable, but turns out it's not. Maybe in 7.0, but I suggest just grabbing a buddy if you want to get some glamours from O2S to 3. Our next stop is Sigmascape, starting with O5S's Phantom Train. Other than the pushback from the stack killing me, and the ghosts being spooky, get it? Spooky ghosts. Anyways, Mr. Train was kind of simple. Although kiting the tethered ghost and getting the baited AoE marker to kill it with was a bit of a pain to angle, it's doable and the train went down relatively quickly. O5S was a success. Next up, O6S's Demon Chad. A knock. And these mechanics are incredibly simple for the most part. And if you mess any of them up, the most you'll take is a vulnerability stack. The only thing that got me here was this apathetic debuff which negates healing, and I had no idea how to cleanse it. Luckily, chat is a lot smarter than me and suggested painting that thing in the middle. Lo and behold, it gets rid of the debuff, and then I pushed on and finished Chad off. With that, O6S was in the bag, and so far, so good. 2 fights in and already easily doable solo. But what about O7S's Guardian? Oh boy. I say oh boy, but it actually wasn't that bad, although it did take a few attempts. You wouldn't think a fight from 2 expansions ago would hit as hard as this guy does, but damn was I wrong, because he hurts. A lot of the mechanics I just couldn't do, but fortunately they aren't raid wipe mechanics, at least not with 236k HP. A few extra attacks here and there, and 7 stacks of damage down, which is so potent that I actually did 0 damage for 20 seconds. Didn't help that Guardian summoned this ad that also hit like a truck during this time while he continued to throw tank busters on me, but I pushed through. The next hurdle were these Menace Air Force ads, which I was ill prepared for, and like the idiot I am, I ate a missile to the face and died shortly after. But with the next attempt, I knew what to expect. There was also these bombs I had to defuse. I scuffed the first one, but after my chat once again being the higher intellect beings they are, pointed out the fact that one of the wires is brighter than the other, and that is the one to cut. A little later, he enters his virus program, which used to be a whole mechanic, but being solo, it's just ignorable. I got Hysteria and walked into the wall, but it's only a dot, so whatever. Then he used a nerd radar on me, but I'm not a nerd, so it didn't do anything to me. After that, it was as simple as finishing Mr. Robot off. Sigmascape was looking pretty good. Already 3 fights soloed, and with only 1 more fight to go. This could be entirely soloable. For the next encounter, we are up against Kefka. First phase was simple enough. Just don't get hit off the edge by the knockbacks and DPS him down. I pushed him into his next phase at around 58%, and now the real challenge begins. Phase 2. And during this phase, he does this lovely mechanic known as Heartless Angel, which lowered my HP to 1 HP. As a Dark Knight, I don't really have much self-healing, but that's nothing a Hyper Potion can't fix. The really scary part here is during Forsaken, he changes the arena, spawns 3 2-player stack towers, a head that tethers to me and explodes on impact, and he casts Heartless Arc. Archangel. Similar to the previous Heartless cast, but this time it gives me an incurable debuff, making me unable to heal for 11 seconds. Meanwhile, the towers go off and I need to take that head. But because this content is several years old and Dark Knight has this very handy tool called the Blackest Night, I could shield through the tower explosions and take the head, all without taking damage. The hard part here is Kefka casting Wings of Destruction, which is a tank buster. I just used a TBN, so it's on cooldown. I still have 1 HP. So the only option I have is pop Living Dead and pray I can heal myself back up with the 3 damage downs I got from the towers exploding, and in panic I use a Hyper Potion to help out cleanse the Walking Dead debuff. This actually worked quite well, although Kefka wasn't just finished yet and spawned another set of towers and another head, on top of using another Heartless Archangel. But this is when I realized that the higher HP you have before the cast finishes, the less time you have on the incurable debuff. So that's nice, and the towers and heads were just another TBN. After that, a raid wide, which is kind of scary with my little HP, but it didn't do much to me. Then it was just a matter of dodging and solving simple mechanics until the next Forsaken, and all I did during this Forsaken was run around the arena, dodging these AoEs, which was easy enough. After that, more AoE dodging and mechanic solving until the next Forsaken. And this one is where things get a little spicy. Initially, this is just a bunch of towers, a tether that knocks me back but arm's length nullifies that, a tank buster, more towers, and a tether that puts me to sleep, a raid wide, and then we get a repeat of the first set of towers from his first Forsaken. But by this time I know how to handle it, and then just some dodgeable AoEs from his wing and the arena, and I knew to face him east here so I have a little nice pocket of safety. After that, it was as simple as finishing Kefka off. So if you want those diamond weapons and armor glams, Sigmascape is entirely soloable. Finally, we have Alphascape, and this was the most disappointing discovery yet. But let's not get ahead of ourselves. Our first stop is 009S, facing off against Chaos. We don't talk about that first stuff. This guy was actually one of my biggest hurdles yet. I don't know if that's because I am bad at the game or just played the wrong tank, but yeah. Chaos has 2 rotations and 4 different phases, but he goes through all 4 phases regardless of rotation, just in a different order. Still, it made practicing this a bit of a pain. His Tsunami phase was a non-issue. Earthquake Halo was annoying. Every time he uses Earthquake, he gave me a debuff that needs to be fully healed within the timer, or I died, and it took me too many pulls, I'm willing to admit, before I finally read that damn tooltip. This is especially bad as a Dark Knight with no self-sustain, but I solved it by just heavily mitigating the Earthquake, taking no damage and letting the debuff just auto-cleanse. The next annoyance was the knockdown mechanic, a stack marker which also stunned me and does an AoE when Chaos casted Big Bang, and this instantly killed me. Doubts clouded my mind here, but maybe there's a way. So next time I tried my invuln and it worked, but I didn't cleanse the healing debuff, so I died. I also tried placing the stack marker far away from Chaos, and as soon as it went off, plunged onto Chaos, and just like that, I was safely away from the instant kill AoE. And with that, I solved the Earthquake phase. After figuring that out, it wasn't too bad. Inferno was as simple as Tsunami, and Cyclone had its moments, but was relatively simple. I just had to remember to either have my back or front facing the tornado depending on debuff. And then it was as simple as killing Chaos. Next up, O10S, Midgard Summer, and I really hated this fight back in the day, and I still hate it. He does these spins and rolls that just make no sense. I had to have these raid called for me. And these are the most unintuitive mechanic I think I've ever experienced in my entire time of raiding in FF14. And I've been raiding since A Realm Reborn and done every raid tier and ultimate fight. But this takes the cake for being the worst mechanic I've ever dealt with. So he basically does these spins or rolls, and depending on the order, it means either in, out, cardinals, or into cardinals. But I just ignored them because I wasn't going to relearn all those patterns, and I just didn't care enough. But that wasn't the real problem here. The issue with this fight was time immemorial. A tank swap mechanic giving either death from below or above. If it's below, it's fine for now, but if it was above, the boss would give me a doom and I'd just die. The problem was, even with death from below, a dragon spawns that is grounded and will just hit you and doom you. So solo you die either way, death from below simply delays the inevitable. I tried killing these nails as quickly as possible, potentially kiting the ad so he couldn't hit me, but no such luck. And honestly, I couldn't think of any other way to make this work, so I'm going to deem O10S currently impossible to solo. Moving on to O11S's Omega, which is a simple enough start, not much here mechanic wise. That is until Program Loop. Here an ad spawns in the middle and a bunch of 2-player stack towers. Obviously I can't take these, so they explode and give me memory loss, which takes control of my movement. Great. But maybe if I kill the ad fast enough, this won't be a problem. But I just couldn't. It wasn't dying that quickly. I even tried switching to a DPS, which I have relatively geared, and I just couldn't kill it in time. Even then, the boss does a raid wide after this, and if you aren't fully topped for this, it'll just petrify and kill you. So with that, I deem O11S currently impossible to solo. Next up was O12S's Omega M and F, and I spent way too much time trying my best to solo this. The first hurdle was beyond defense into pile pitch, which does a ton of damage but can be mitigated through. After a few simple mechanics, we then deal with 2 stack markers on me, a singular player, at the same time, which does a ton of damage, but with enough mitigation, it is survivable. After that, we pray that Omega M and F does their resonant cast, and it is remote resonance, so we can safely tank Omega M and F together. If it was close resonance, we wouldn't be able to tank them close together, and we would have to wipe and reset over and over again until we got lucky. Next up was fundamental synergy, and this was going to be the tough part, as this will straight up kill me without my invuln, and this is where Dark Knight really falls short here. I didn't have enough time to cleanse my Walking Dead debuff because I can't attack Omega M or F during this point. So I switched off to Gunbreaker and tried it with Superblade, which was infinitely easier. Living through that, I had to relearn the upcoming mechanics, but after a bit of time I managed to pull through and kill one of the 2 ads, and to my absolute shock, I didn't actually kill one of them. Instead, it simply made it so I could attack the other one, and with that, the next resonance cast was sure to be close resonance, and I had no way to even live through the next fundamental synergy. Deeming this impossible, I did end up grabbing a buddy to boost me through phase 1 into phase 2, which is actually doable solo. Most of the mechanics in phase 2 don't even happen because I was just one player and it was just a lot of damage, so I just had to plan my cooldowns out accordingly, but overall it was pretty easy. But what's the point of being able to solo phase 2 if you can't even solo phase 1? It feels a bit bad, therefore I deem O12S simply impossible to solo. And that makes Alphascape pretty bleak. 1 out of 4 fights soloable, and that's it. So if you want these glamours, just grab a buddy or 2 and save yourself a lot of pain. Well, with the verdict on the raid tiers being out, let's finish off with the Stormblood Extremes and see just how many of these are soloable, shall we? We'll start with Susano and nope. His intermission mechanic makes it impossible. Someone has to hold the sword for it to become attackable, and someone has to attack the sword. Otherwise, Susano will just raid wipe. Maybe if I place my Salted Earth down and then take the sword, but nope. It either doesn't do enough damage or just it isn't doing damage due to, I don't know, shenanigans. Ugh, that's another impossible solo. Next was Lakshmi, which is hardly noteworthy because she was such a joke. The only annoying part is the ad phase here, but then I remembered just get them all low and finish them off individually. Easy to solo. Next up, we had the big Dragon Boy Shinryu, and he was relatively easy to solo. As long as you actually know the mechanics, and this isn't a guide, really I had no struggle here other than the rage looking a little bit tight, but overall pretty easy to solo. Then Tsukiyami, and man, this was easy up until the meteors marking me, which marked me with all 3 meteors, which makes it impossible to make a safe meteor to cycle my debuff and avoid the doom debuff because they all just explode. I saw a video where someone did manage to actually plunge in time and due to some crazy server manipulation spawn 1 meter away from the other 2, but I tried this for at least an hour and had no luck, so it's almost impossible, and honestly, you're better off just grabbing a buddy for this one. Thankfully, our next trial, Rathlos, was easy enough, and as a level 90, I had so much HP that even if I did get hit by any of his attacks, it was a non-issue. This was ease to solo with no real problems. Next up is Mr. Tiger Man, who is way too angry. State of Shock was pretty scary because it gives a physical Vun and then does another one, but it's easily mitigated or invun through. No real problems in this fight other than that, and he dies super fast. Another ease solo. Then we had Suzaku, which wasn't too bad except having to remember how to deal with certain mechanics. Take these ads for instance, I completely forgot how to handle them, so I just revived them, ignored them, and then in-run through their raid wide, which in turn kills them. Then thankfully the Dance Dance Revolution part accounts for soloing, and only spawns enough orbs for 1 player. Then I forgot what Mesmerizing Melody does, and oof. After that, the next hurdle was how hard she hit. Again, maybe if I wasn't a Dark Knight, this wouldn't have been so bad, but it was just as simple as using all my mitigation on these Phantom Flurries. After that, the rest of the fight was simple enough, just dodge mechanics and GGEs. I say that, but she was probably my biggest possible solo struggle in the Extreme Trials. Finally, we have Seiru, and again, this was really simple. There was one time which was scary, and I think it's worth mentioning, and that's when he does these 2-line stacks, one after another. But it's easy enough to live through with enough mitigation or using an invuln. Other than that, Seiru ease peas. And with that, I attempted every single Extreme and Savage Raid during the Stormblood era, and the results were, as you can tell, extremely mixed. If you're skipping to this part of the video, then the results are as follows. O1S possible, O2S to O3S impossible, O4S possible, O5S to O8S possible, O9S possible, O10 to O12S impossible, Susanoo impossible, Lakshmi and Shinru possible, Tsukiyami almost impossible, Rathalos possible, Byakko, Suzaku, and Seiru possible. Now, I wish you luck in your glamour hunting and melt farming. Bit of a different format this time, but I hope you enjoyed it, and make sure to check out my Patreon and other socials in the description below, and maybe catch me on Twitch where I do stuff like this all the time. And like always, thank you to my Patreons, and I'll see you in the next video. Goodbye for now. Oh, and subscribe. Bye bye.